Holly understood that she would not be able to carry all her purchases home. Today the farmer's market was so good that she couldn't resist and bought a lot of fruit. The girl came out of the market and started looking for a place to put the bags to get her phone out and call a cab. But just as she found a place near a small store, a young man jumped out of it and almost hit the girl. Bags fell out of her hands, some of them tore, and the fruit spilled out on the ground. Holly groaned with unlucky. "I'm sorry," said the young man with sincere regret, and began to help pick up the fruit. "Come on, it was my own fault. I wasn't looking where I was going. The only problem now is how to pack it all up and get it home." Eric felt guilty. He had had a big fight with his father. He had lost his temper and rushed out of the store too quickly without looking around. "I have a car not far from here. I will drive you, and at least I'll make up for my guilt a little." Eric looked at the girl, and he really wanted that she would agree. She was unusually beautiful. The girl wore simple jeans and a t-shirt, and had no makeup on, but all this gave her such a touching tenderness that the man's heart ached. Seeing that she hesitated, Eric told the girl his name and swore that he was not a maniac. This declaration made Holly laugh, and she agreed. Eric tried to drive as slowly as possible to have time to talk. "Tell me, would you think I'd be impudent if I asked you to go to the movies with me?" he asked. "No," replied Holly with a smile, "but I can go out only on Saturday." "I'm glad you agreed at all. I'll be looking forward to Saturday." At this point they pulled up to the needed house, and Eric even whistled at what he saw. "Wow, is this your house? Your parents must be wealthy." "Yes, they bought this house recently, but I don't want to talk about it." "No problem, it doesn't matter," answered Eric, and that was the truth. He helped her get the bags out of the car and said as a farewell, "I'll be here at 5 o'clock on Saturday. Okay." The girl nodded in agreement, said goodbye, and disappeared behind the wrought iron gate. Eric got in his car and drove home. An hour ago, he had argued with his father because he refused to give him money for a trip to the sea with his friends. "Eric, I am very upset because of you. Don't you understand how much I need your help? We have 4 stores, a lot of work, and I am alone. You could have helped me during the season at least. You're already 26. It's time to earn money by yourself." Eric got angry. "Money? All you think about is money. I don't want to work in those stores." "Well, if you don't want to work, then you don't need the money," said his father with a sigh. "You mean you won't give them to me?" asked the son with a challenge. "Should I? You don't want to work. You deny the money." Exactly after these words, Eric rushed out of his father's office and ran into Holly. Remembering this ugly scene, Eric was parking in front of the house. Suddenly, he received an SMS about the money being transferred to his account. But now Eric's mood changed. Even though his father still transferred money to him, the young man decided not to go to the holiday, but to stay and help his father with family business. He was looking forward to Saturday and thought that the time would pass much faster while he would be working. During the first days that Eric helped his father, they became closer. After his mother's death, he and his father had a rather cool relationship. They had never had a heart-to-heart talk, and Eric had always limited himself to only asking him for money. But now, for the first time, he was able to open up to his father and tell him about his meeting with Holly. "Dad, I think Holly comes from a rich family. They have such a house. What if her parents don't want her to go out with me?" "Why do you think so?" "Maybe they're perfectly adequate people." And then Eric told his father about his doubts. He couldn't understand why the daughter of such wealthy parents was going to the market by herself and carrying bags of groceries home, and this inconsistency constantly plagued him. His father agreed that it was strange, but he was sure it would clear up soon. On Saturday, Eric barely waited until the appointed hour to pick up the girl. She came out to him in a white dress that made her look even more beautiful. They had a wonderful evening, and Eric realized that he did not want to leave her for a minute. When he returned home, he told his father about his intention to marry, but the man warned him not to make a hasty decision and advised him to try to find out more about her, to date with her, because the situation with her parents was still unclear. 2 months later, Eric could no longer stand it and asked Holly to marry him. She hung on his neck with joy, but when Eric mentioned meeting her parents, Holly's face showed fright. "Let's do it later. They're out of town and I don't know when they'll be back." "Are you sure? But that doesn't seem right." "It's okay, really, they won't mind." After walking Holly home, Eric got in his car and drove off, but his mind was spinning with the idea of figuring things out. In the evening he told his father about the conversation with Holly, and his father said thoughtfully, "I would like to see what kind of parents they are, how they communicate. Holly categorically does not invite you to visit and says her parents are gone. That's very strange and suspicious. Dad, can you give me a delivery boy's uniform? I'll sneak in as a courier and take a look at everything." "That's not a bad idea, but what if it's dangerous?" asked Dad. "Come on, they're not gangsters, are they?" And so, 3 days later, Eric, putting tickets to some concert in an envelope and putting on a courier service uniform and a wig, glasses, and glued-on moustache, went to Holly's house. He was briefly questioned at the entrance, but then led inside the house. He almost immediately saw Holly, who, in her maid's uniform, was neatly dusting the shelves. At that moment, a thin, sickly-looking woman entered the room. She took the envelope and signed the papers. "Anything else?" she asked. "No," replied a stunned Eric, and immediately rushed out of the house. His face was burning, and only one thought was beating in his head. Holly had lied to him. But why? After wandering aimlessly through the streets, Eric came home and immediately told his father everything. The man advised him not to make hasty conclusions and to talk frankly with Holly first. The girl called in the evening. "Hey, why didn't you call me today?" "Holly, tell me, when are your parents going to be home? Don't you think it's strange that we are planning the wedding, but my father and I haven't met your folks?" Holly was silent, apparently thinking about what to say, and Eric couldn't stand it. "I was at your house today, and I know you work as a maid." "I see I was right, and I really heard your voice today. All right, come tomorrow night with your father to visit," she said in a calm voice, and hung up. Now Eric did not understand anything at all. He was in doubt whether he should go, because it would look very strange, and he didn't want to be in an awkward situation, but his father, hearing about the invitation, on the contrary, was full of enthusiasm. "We should definitely go. It's about time we got things cleared up." The door was opened for them by a surprised guard, but then Holly appeared behind him and, making a sign to him, invited them in. There were the owners of the house in the living room, and a tall man was clearly angry with the strangers. "Holly, explain immediately what's going on, or I'll fire you." "Don't worry, Mr. Cullen. Starting tomorrow, I no longer work here," Holly said with a chuckle, which caused bewilderment on the face of the lady of the house. "I suppose everyone needs an explanation, so I ask you to listen to me." And Holly began her story. It turns out that a little more than 20 years ago, Mr. Cullen and his young wife Margaret had a child, but this was not in Mr. Cullen's plans, who had married the ailing daughter of a millionaire only because of a rich inheritance. He paid corrupt doctors, and they told the mother that her baby died immediately after delivery. Mrs. Cullen turned pale with horror and shouted, "What on earth are you speaking, you little wretch? I'm going to call the police." "Call them. They'll be interested to know too that the baby was actually alive." Margaret went pale and stared at Holly, who went on with her story. The baby girl ended up in an orphanage. Soon she was adopted and named Holly. Her adoptive parents raised her as their own daughter, though they never hid the truth. When Holly grew up, she wanted to know who her real parents were. She wanted to look into their eyes. Holly began to find out the facts, gathered a whole dossier. She found out who were her parents and finally got a job at their house as a maid to get revenge somehow. But when she saw her mother, she realized that she was not guilty of anything and that she had become a victim of her husband. After finishing her story, Holly walked over to Margaret and handed her a folder with all the supporting documents, including a DNA test. Margaret turned to her pale husband. "What are you looking at? Do you think I could love someone like you? Yes, I waited for you to die, but you tricked me. And you can't prove anything," shouted Mr. Cullen and rushed out of the house. Margaret began to sink to the floor slowly. Eric's father rushed to her and picked her up, and Eric rushed after Mr. Cullen and finally stopped him from escaping. Mr. Cullen was jailed. Thanks to the documents that Holly had collected, he had no chance of getting away with it. 6 months later, the young couple's wedding took place, a beautiful and noisy celebration. But that wasn't the only pleasant event. When the slow dance ended, everyone took their places, and only Holly's mother and Eric's father remained on the stage. And then a beautiful melody began to play, and the man, quite worried, held out a box with a ring. "Margaret, will you be my wife?" There was complete silence in the hall, and Holly and Eric looked at each other happily. "Yes, of course," answered Margaret joyfully, and threw herself on the man's neck, and everyone around them applauded.